Ballad of Johnny Arcane by Jim Nail, read by Jim Nail, Chapter 9, Winter in King Corn, Part 2. Midwinter. In the darkest hour of the coldest night of the season, two strangers appeared in the snowy meadow of King Corn. They pitched their tent at the far end of the clearing, by the grove of walnuts, now empty of leaves. The night might have passed peacefully if it weren't for the cows. In the pre-dawn hours, an alarming sound arose from the meadow, a bellowing, groaning outcry, heavy with distress. The people in the houses awoke, stumbled out of bed, and lit their corn lamps. "What is that racket?" They threw on robes and jackets and ventured out, carrying lanterns. Mayor Burlyman was the first to reach the tent, followed shortly by Bearclaw, Jocko, and Johnny Arcane. Aunt stayed behind with Chestnut. The strangers were cowboys, and they had brought with them two large but sickly beasts. The female lay on her side in the snow, her breath labored, her eyes glazing over. The skinny bull stood and snorted and pawed the ground, his bare rib cage heaving with each thrust of his hooves. One of the cowboys, the heftier of the two, had his arms slung in a red bandana. "Dag nabbit, Polly May," he cried, "you would pick this time to whelp, and now not a blade of grass in sight. What is this world coming to anyways?" The other cowboy, a scrawny man with a crooked jaw, shook the larger cowboy by the shoulder. Climber, turn around, look behind you." Climber turned and nearly fell over at the sight of most of the population of King Corn approaching through the snow with lanterns. "Well, crack my knuckles, Jack. This isn't supposed to be happening. She could at least have waited till morning. Everybody, go back to bed." The townspeople drew closer and peered in, cautiously, curiously. Many of them had never seen a cow before, and to them, cowboys were the stuff of legends. Burlyman stepped forward. "My name's Burlyman. This is the town of King Corn. I'm the mayor here. We don't want to go back to bed. We want to help." Climber made a sour face. The other cowboy tugged at his arm. "They want to help." "Oh, shut up, Birdleg. It's not my fault this is happening." He turned to the gathering crowd. "I'm sorry. Everything's gone all turnsy-topsy. We were in the Southlands waiting for the winter, but the winter never came. The cows got confused. She's not supposed to calve until the springtime, and now, look at me, corn-damn blackcoats broke my arm. How am I supposed to pull a calf out in this condition?" Burlyman jumped down and touched the cow, stroked her behind the ears, then ran his hands down her belly. "Well, I've delivered puppies before. This couldn't be that much different. Help me now. I need hot water, rags, and some kind of clamp. Oh, and a cutting tool." People scurried across the meadow. At the longhouse, someone rang the dinner bell. Children came out and started playing in the snow, rolling snowballs with mittened hands. A bucket of warm water appeared, and a bundle of fabric scraps from the seamstery. Burlyman dampened a rag, fell to his knees and began to splay the cow's hind legs with his bare hands. The cow shuddered, then convulsed. One leg kicked out, and a heavy hoof struck Burlyman in the temple. He fell over backwards in the snow. "Well, she kicks harder than a dog," said Birdleg. The cow shuddered again, rolled herself over on her back, then somehow managed to pull herself up, standing on her spindly, shaky legs. The bull snorted and pawed, and both of them stared down at the man who lay bleeding in the snow between them. The cow nodded. The bull nodded. It was like they were trying to make a decision. "I can help," rang out a woman's voice. It was Maggie Mender, the midwife and village herbalist, wearing the pale green smock of her profession. Johnny remembered her as the woman who tried to climb the silo. She rolled up her sleeves to reveal strong, muscular arms. But first she went to Burlyman, who was sitting up, rubbing his neck, dabbing his fingers gingerly in the blood on his cheek. "Well, you certainly have a thing about old wounds, don't you? She knocked you open right along the scar line. Myrtle, take the mayor back to the house and patch him up. You, cowboy, what's the name of your bull?" Climber stepped back. We call him Ramrod, ma'am." "Well, Ramrod ought to not watch this. Might disturb him. Take him back to the long hall. Tell Axel to give him something to eat. He probably likes some greens." "Yes, ma'am," said Climber, but he did not move. "Go on, get." All the way to the longhouse, leading Ramrod by a bit of rope, Climber kept stopping, looking back, until eventually the two of them, man and bull, disappeared into the shadows. Birdleg did not go with them. The cow's name be Polly May," he told Maggie. It was mostly women who stepped forward, holding up their lanterns so Maggie could do her work. The men stood back, looked at the ground, looked at their feet, looked at their hands, rubbed their hands together, stomped their feet. Johnny did not hold back, though. He worked himself up through the skirts and the sweaters until he found a bare rock at the side of this cow, where he could sit quietly and watch the action. He did not have a lantern. Several women helped Maggie lift Polly May and gently lower her back to her side in the snow. "She does this on her own," said Maggie. "That was Burlyman's problem. You gotta win a girl's trust before you go spreading her legs." A tableau of women gathered around the cow like a band of wood sprites, stroking her bulging belly, her heaving sides. Shortly, the birthing began. First the ooze of mucus, then the hooves appeared. "Here she comes!" But soon there was a problem. The legs were turned wrong. The hooves were jamming in the gates. Polly May groaned. "She's gonna need a little help. We be getting slimy now." Maggie reached up far inside, a film of pink trailing down her arms. The other women crowded around, blocking Johnny's view. Polly May bellowed and howled, but there was another sound as well. The women were singing a tuneless song, vocal dips and sighs. comfort, encouragement. Suddenly, there was a shriek, followed by a whooshing sound, and a plume of steam rose from the snow. Johnny shoved his way through the women to see what was happening, Birdleg right behind him. It looked like an enormous eel, or a lamprey, or just a coagulated glob of moist brown flesh, with a few sprigs of coarse fur tufting out. It looked lifeless and formless. "What is it?" cried one woman. "It's dead." "Isn't it? Tell me it's dead." "It's not dead. Don't touch it. Watch." They stepped back and inadvertently formed a perfect circle. Johnny and Birdleg, the only men among them. It was as if their fixed attention woke the creature. A spasm of energy rippled through the flesh, and out of the formlessness a body emerged. The head bolted up. A mouth appeared, opened, and took in a deep gasp of air. And then there were legs, kicking and thrashing, clumsy with purpose. A tiny cow-shaped being struggled to its feet, took one look at the sky, and toppled back over in the snow. "It's so wet. Get the towels. We have to dry it." No. That's the mama's job. Keep watching." The little calf made several more attempts at finding its land legs, and finally, Polly May took notice. She clambered to her feet and proceeded to slam the little one back into the snow with the firm butt of her head. Then she covered it with her tongue, dutifully lapping up all the slime and the mucus, all the curds and clots of her own body. The calf arched its back, stood and fell, as it cut a stumbling course toward Mama's big, full udders. "Well, cowboy, looks like you got another bull to worry about," said Maggie. She grabbed one of the damp rags to wipe her arms and turned to the circle of women. "I think that may be the weirdest thing I've ever done." Birdleg followed Bearclaw and Johnny back to the longhouse, with Jocko trailing behind. A light dusting of snow was beginning to fall. They found Ramrod tethered to a post, munching on a slop of winter kale, and Burlyman and Climber inside, lolling at a table in the long hall, drunk on corn whiskey. Burlyman's head was bandaged up like a beehive. He rolled it from side to side and flashed a big sloppy grin. "Johnny, my boy, I never knew you could make an inebriant out of the very substance after which this town was named. These cowboys know some tricks." "Ha!" Bearclaw laughed. "This behavior is not befitting a man in your position. Let me taste that stuff." Climber cocked his head at Birdleg. "What'd she drop this time? Another bull? Scrawny looking thing." "Damn!" Climber slapped the palm of his good arm on the table, making the mugs jump. "Well, you better go bring him in. The mayor here says he's got some room in the goat shed." "Climber, I'm not going back out there." "It's cold. Besides, there's women out there." He said this as if he were talking about wolves or horned pigs. "Well, look at me. I'm in no shape. Somebody's got to take care of those cows." "I'll go," said Jocko. Birdleg jumped back in surprise. Jocko had slipped in behind them, and no one had really noticed he was there. Bearclaw took a swig of the corn whiskey and he grimaced. "Sounds like this be a job for the musicians then. Johnny, you come with us. Let's go see what these cows are all about." Outside, the snow was beginning to fall in flakes. The meadow white and empty. No humans in sight, but back against the trees, a warm light glowed from the goat shed where people stood slapping their shoulders and puffing cold clouds of breath. The three musicians trudged through the deep drifts and stomped the snow off their shoes when they reached the open door. The 5 remaining goats of King Corn huddled in the shadowed corners of the shed, unsure what to make of these new guests. Polly May lay sleeping on her side in a bed of hay, but the little one was standing straight and proud, not a wobble to his knees, staring up at the rafters and the cobwebs with wonder, as if he were beholding the gates of paradise. There were 2 women there. One was going over the calf with a soft bristle brush, while the other tied little colored ribbons into the longer tufts on his bony head. Johnny recognized these women. They were Frankie's 2 favorite scullery maids, but tonight they were utterly transformed. Their faces glistened in the corn lamps. Their movements conveyed a sense of sureness and calm, as if they had been studying for this moment all their lives. They were both singing little wordless songs woven from the movements of their fingers. "Johnny, do you think the cowboys will let us name him? We have a name for him." "Oh, so you do. And what would that name be?" "We want to name him Johnny, after you." Johnny didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. Bearclaw stepped into the light of the shed and found himself a seat on a bale of hay by the door. Not knowing what else to do, Johnny joined him, but Jocko didn't sit. He went straight to the little calf, took its head between both his hands, scratched behind the ears, and stared into his face. Something passed between them, Jocko and the calf. Something almost visible, a kind of mist, or a flicker from a candle. The girls continued singing so softly you could hear only the snowflakes settling on the roof. This went on for a long time, until finally Bearclaw spoke. "Well," he said, "I think that's a fine name for a cow."